come from all backgrounds. Not all of us are medicine students. We have many students from electrics, electronical engineering, psychology, genetics, and so on. So I would like to introduce our professors first, who will be joining us on the first section of this event, which is our panel. Firstly, we have Dr. Hale Yapıcı Eser. Welcome.
Thank you.
Upon graduating from Hacettepe University for her undergraduate degree, she completed her specialization at Gazi University Medical School of Psychiatry. She received her master's degree in neuroscience from the MD Ph.D. program at Hacettepe University. She was also a guest researcher at the Copenhagen University's Biological and Psychiatric Institution and the McLean Hospital at Harvard University. Dr. Yapıcı Eser's research areas include the investigation of the effect of chronic and acute stress and psychiatric disorders in the mind and body relationship. Welcome again. We also have Dr. Atay Vural. Upon graduating from Hacettepe University for his undergraduate degree, he completed his Ph.D. education at the same university through the integrated MD Ph.D. doctorate program. His doctoral research focused on neurology, and his experimental work is based on the visualization of intravital microcirculation by using brains of animals. While Dr. Vural completed his specialization in neurology at Hacettepe University, he also participated in different clinic and neurovisualization studies. His academic interests are in the areas of neuroimmunology, neurogenetics, and neurotechnology. Currently, he is conducting research in areas of multiple sclerosis, autoantibody-related neurological diseases, and rare neurogenetic diseases. We also have Dr. Canero, who is an assistant professor of psychology and the principal investigator of the Mind, Language, and Technology Lab at Sabancı University. In 2016, she received a PhD in developmental psychology and neuroscience from Temple University in Philadelphia, United States. Her main research interest is language and cognition, and she conducts research that cross-cuts several disciplines, including developmental psychology, cognitive psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, and human-robot interaction. Welcome again. So our first section will be moderated by our board members, Deniz and Orhan. And now you got the word, everyone. Have a nice session.
Thank you, Leal.
Thanks for the introduction. I'm not sure if Atay is also here now. Is he late?
He's a little bit late.
I guess
something
so.
about the link, but he will join us, I think.
But meanwhile, we're planning to start.
If it's okay for you, I can start with our question. And first of all, I want to thank all of our teachers for their time. And first question will be a little bit general. And the question is, what are the features of an application that makes the student accepted? What are the 3 most important things you want to accept in the CV? What kind of competence do application need? And do you encourage students to email you about her application and willingness to work in your laboratory in advance, in addition to their formal application? It's a little bit long question, but we just want to learn a general way of application.
We will be directing the first questions to both of our professors, so you can take the word.
Okay, then maybe I can start. Okay, first, thanks for the invitation. I hope this will be a beneficial talk for all of you. I'm also a very junior faculty. In fact, it has been my 5th year at Koç University, and also after completing my PhD, it has been almost 7 years. Maybe while listening, it could be long for you, but this is really a very short period if you are going to run your own lab and if you're going to run your own research group and supervising all the people and choosing the students is really a new skill for junior faculty as well. So your questions are also new explorations for me as well, since I have been running a lab since the last 4 years, and I have been working with some students, and now I have also known what I'm looking for in students more and better since the last years. So I can say about the competencies that the applicants should have. It's not just the GPA, of course, but it's the for me it's the organization of the student and how much they have been related with research before this application. So was this a research path that they just decided, or was this something that they previously already known and they were already working with some professors while they were in undergraduate, and if they have already learned about some specific methods, techniques, and if they know how to search a background for a hypothesis. And so I think their previous experiences about research are very important for the application. I know most of the other questions that you will ask are also related, but just to simply answer about your answers, I think the previous experiences, research experiences, both about literature search, methodology, and statistical analysis as well, are very important because if the student does not know about this, it will be our hard work to teach them like 1.5 years, and this will really delay the continuity of most of our research. So think that the principal investigator has a pipeline of research and they want to run this pipeline without much delays. So they are looking for someone who is really keen and who is really organized to run this pipeline. So in my opinion, this is what I expect. So I think previous experience is very important. And if they really wish to work in our lab before the application, I think this would really be very good. We always talk with other PIs that we should at least work for like 6 months together to decide if we really will marry this person as a master's or PhD student. This really seems like a marriage because you also contribute and the student also contributes. This is from both two sides. It's not just the gain of the PI or just the gain of the student, but it's sharing like both time and knowledge and producing together. I think previous knowledge, experience, and discipline is very important. So this is my summary.
Thank you very much.
Hocam. Anything you want to add, Dr. Canero?
So, I mean, I agree with Hale Hocam, and basically, yeah, research experience, I think, is first and foremost, the most important thing. And to get into a little more detail of it, I guess for me at least, it has to be like really exactly like a sweet spot in a way that like students are actually interested in what I do and I can supervise. But at the same time, if it's like, the student is just repeating what I'm doing, it's not really that interesting either. I mean, it's not technically CV, it's more about the research statement or statement purpose, whatever the name you want to use. So like actually bringing something new would be very nice as well. And then also another thing is, I mean, you guys are just finishing undergraduate education. So I'm not expecting you to know like that many things, of course. I mean, it has been like, only that much of education anyway. So one thing I expect is like ability to learn new things. Of course, I have to actually train new students too, like new skills and like could be like a program, so it could be about research design. There are lots of things to learn. So in that sense, like if there's just things indicating that these students are able to learn new things and motivate to learn new things, more about like a potential basically I can see based on the record base. Yes, I would say. Anything else? And a kind of a consistency actually. If we are talking about CV, if like the student is doing impressive record, but it's all over the place, I feel like, or maybe like it's not really like neuroscience or psychology is not his or her passion, but like just kind of like, whatever, all over the place. So actually seeing like some records suggesting that this person is actually really motivated and engaged in the research topic I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for the detailed responses. And welcome, Atay Hocam. We've actually just started, so you did not miss much. And we can continue with our second question, and we can ask it to Atay Hocam. So what would you recommend to us as undergraduate students to give the most importance to during those undergraduate years? And if you had a chance to go back to those years and reapply, what would you do differently? What would you give more emphasis to?
So it depends on your aim actually.
Mhm.
So if you want to pursue a scientific career, I can answer for that direction. So definitely you need to participate in research projects, at least uh, to be affiliated to a lab for as longer as possible, as just Hale Hoca mentioned. Um, you need to be in a lab. So if this is possible, be in a lab and involve actively for at least like 4, 5, or 6 months, not just 1 month, 2 months. This is really very, very short. And I think it's not much useful for both sides. To be honest, almost none of the PIs would like to have a student for 1 month, definitely. I can say that. 2 months is also quite short, actually. In some specific circumstances, this 2 months, for example, may be useful for the student and maybe for the lab as well, but it's quite rare, actually. Don't expect to be really useful, especially if you aim to have real hands-on experience. But this so if theoretically speaking, or to at least have an impression of how a lab is going on, what is discussed in the lab meetings, what is the atmosphere, uh, what is the stress level, etc. Participating, uh, especially to lab meetings in the era of Zoom, especially, may be useful, because this is also an important part of education, but it doesn't, of course, give the full picture realistically. But especially for real hands-on experience, to understand if you really like research or not, it's really important to actively participate in research. Grades are, of course, important, especially if you will apply to foreign countries, master's, PhD programs, because it's like the preliminary or the basic requirement. If your grades are not top, you will not even be considered. But if it's top, it doesn't mean that you will have an advantage. It's just like a basic requirement for abroad. For us, I should admit that it's slightly different, at least personally. Of course, grades are important, but we see sometimes that the student applying to us has an excellent grades, maybe did major as well, but absolutely zero lab experience. This also makes us think second time, because we also, if the student really likes research or is really interested in, it's common that he or she cannot stay still during the undergraduate years and he is doing something actively. Or probably I should also mention that sometimes or frequently things may not go well for you when you start an internship in a lab. It may not be your fault, or it may not even be fault of the lab or the PI you are going to, because sometimes, like especially in these 2 years because of COVID, things may just be stop or be going on very slowly. It really, or the grants may be finished. There may be not much money at that time in the lab you are attending, and things may be going slow, or the PhD student may go on a holiday, or maybe sick, etc. A lot of reasons, but still, your effort is seen in your CV. It's also important. Uh, Mobility, actually, mobility is the key.
Can we add here, so the reference from another professor that you worked from, so the reference that you will get
Mhm.
from the professor that you work with at the undergraduate level is really very important in addition to your GPA, because, they say higher character, trained skill. So some skills can be trained, but how you behaved in the previous lab and the reference letter that you will get from that lab really counts.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments, Ali Hocam, and for the detailed response, Atay Hocam.
Okay, then we continue with third question. And what are the biggest difference between studying neuroscience master or PhD programs in Turkey and abroad?
And we actually have a professor who did her PhD abroad in Temple University, Dr. Canero. But Salih Hocam and Atay Hocam did that in Turkey, as they had introduced. So we can take the word from you.
Right. So it's kind of hard to compare because I only have experience with American universities. So maybe we can try, well, I can try to see that based on my friend's experience, but I don't think there's that much difference, to be honest. I mean, it really depends on some areas of research. I feel like, I mean, for instance, for me, my research is about the language and cognition. So like some areas in this specific study actually are not that common in Turkey. So in that sense, it's a little difficult. It might be a little difficult to find a position, either master's or PhD. So really depends on like your research topic. But then in terms of the actual program, I cannot really think of that many differences. Of course, I mean, there is some stereotypes around like going abroad or whatever, and like, you know, some people actually think it's cool to going abroad and that kind of thing exists. But in terms of actual education, I don't actually think so.
Thank you.
Maybe the curriculum could be a little bit different. I mean, the expectations from PhD. But first, I need to underline that both Atay and I are MD PhD, so we did our PhD while we were in med school. So it was not in the regular line, I mean, after graduation. So maybe our training was also a little bit more different than what's in reality. But I think in Turkey, there's really very limited number of programs for masters and PhD. Even for Koç Neuroscience, master's program is just 1 year old and PhD is just 5 years old or 6. So we have just given some graduates, so they are really very new. And in other schools, so there's in Hacettepe, now in Istanbul University, and since the last 3 to 4 years, in many universities, I think in Istanbul especially, but most of the neuroscience programs are especially under physiology department. So they get the physiology PhD, but they work on neuroscience topics. So I think the neuroscience PhD and master's programs are quite new. And as Dr. Canero has mentioned, so because of this, there are really very limited number of programs. And I think in the past, most of the programs were focused on cellular neuroscience. I think Atay would correct me if I'm wrong, but now there are more programs for cognitive neuroscience and other systems neuroscience. And so there are more people working on it. And so the topics are now also more widespread, but I think in like maybe 6 years ago, it was more cellular neuroscience programs. Atay would correct me. Now we have more cognitive programs as well. And still there are not such titles. You still get the neuroscience master's or PhD, but the PI that you work on could be focusing on one of these topics. And especially I think in Europe, they don't need to collect all these credits for the lectures, right? So they just, especially in Denmark, so when I worked in Denmark, how they wrote the thesis and what was expected for their graduation was very different. So they were not getting this lectures as we expect from Turkey. So in our program, we expect the student to get at least 7 lectures and 21 credits. And after that, they get the qualification exam and then they write the thesis. But in Denmark, what they were doing was, if they were interested, they were getting some lectures, but they were just publishing some studies, and they were just taking them all together and giving these 5 published studies to the PIs, just writing a cover letter. This is what I've done, and this is for my PhD. And then they talk with the supervisors about what they have done to get the qualification. So I think how it's evaluated to get the degree, and if there are any required lectures is also a little bit different from country to country. And also, if you are getting paid during the program, if this is full-time or not, also may depend on the program that you'll be involved in.
Thank
That's
you.
all I can say. Maybe Atay and Dr. Canero can add other things.
Maybe I can shortly add, the main difference is, I think, for Europe and the comparison between Europe and Turkey, you are expected to get your theoretical knowledge in the undergraduate school and masters in Europe, especially. I don't know how it is in USA, but in Turkey, as Hale Hoca mentioned, it's different. You are also even maybe you are expected to learn more in the PhD. I think the first version is better. So learning your stuff before PhD and sparing PhD for just research and for your special topic, I think it's an advantage. But this is the rule given by YÖK. The universities are trying to adapt this according to their vision, but of course this has some limitations. Yes, this is the major difference probably.
So just to add a little bit more about the American university, it is true. I didn't think about the curriculum because we have been talking about the research only, but curriculum is very different. And then also in American university really differ across universities and across program. There are some graduate PhD program. First off, in case some of you are not familiar with, most of the programs are actually like a 4-year, 5-year kind of program, PhD and a master's combined. And then you just get into the program, and then some program actually have a lot of course requirement, while others do not at all, like you almost zero basically. But people end up taking because there are interesting courses offered and as elective now. So in that sense, in the US and in Canada too, in North America, really depends. So you have to actually check what the requirement for each university is. And for psychology and neuroscience, like cognitive psychology and the neuroscience in general, there are some, for instance, my program was because clinically oriented, for a lot of students actually getting a clinical certification. So even students who are not getting a clinical certification were actually taking a lot of courses as requirement. But then like a neighboring school in the same, same city was actually like barely having any requirement because they're not that much focused on the clinical requirements. So really depends.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of the detailed responses. I hope this was enough for the participants. We will go on with the fourth question. The participants are wondering if it's better to apply for a PhD program directly after the undergraduate, or is it better to have a master's degree in this field before starting the PhD?
Maybe I can just continue about like a psychology, kind of more about like a behavioral neuroscience, basically. So I mean, it's really either way. In the US, one thing common is if you can get into PhD already, why not just do it? Well, like a lot, I mean, there are some master's program as well. So a lot of students actually go to master's program to increase GPA or get more research experience. But typically speaking, that is like if you can already get the position, that you people just go to PhD. Another common thing to do, actually, a lot of people do, is actually working for a few years as like a research assistant or lab coordinator at some lab. So there's a gap year between bachelor's degree and a PhD, and then they actually get some research experience and some earn some money as well. And then after they're kind of sure and have like a good record, they are again apply to PhD though. So a lot of people in the US skip masters, and I like the system because it was kind of nice to actually have like a chunk of time to work on the project with the same professor, and like it really just had a continuation. And also I didn't need to worry about getting into PhD program after completing like a few years of doing classes, etc. But then if you are not too sure, for instance, which exact area you want to work in, it might not be a good idea, because basically once you start these a 4-year, 5-year PhD program, you are expected to kind of continue. And the professor really wouldn't like if you actually quitted midway through.
Thank you, Dr. Canero.
I agree with Dr. Canero. So I also think that master's degree can give you some flexibility about if you are not still that much sure about what you are going to do. But if you can get into PhD and if you're already sure about the PI that you will work on and about the topic, I agree that there's not need to delay it too much. So there is also another question on me. It's like, for medicine students, is it before residency or after residency? Will it come, or shall maybe we can wait after Atay's contribution?
I think slightly different in this aspect. If you're graduate from medical school, of course, you will go on probably with a PhD or even maybe as a postdoc. But in general, for science undergraduates, I strongly recommend to do masters, especially in Turkey or good universities, or let's say for our Koç University, and also for Europe. For what reason? Because if you are going to Europe or I think also USA for masters or let's say PhD, you will need an adaptation period. And also you are expected to know some theoretical stuff, soft skills, and also practical skills as well. If you try to learn all of these and at the same time try to adapt to the country just once, such as in PhD, I think it will be extremely difficult and stressful, especially for our people from Turkey, because our culture and in general mindset is different. So I really strongly recommend to do masters first, and even do masters in a good university, and then apply to PhD in a different university or even country, because I think this experience is also very important and nourishing. So even for Turkey, or I think for us at least, I recommend to do masters first, because I think it's really important to get the theoretical knowledge in a dedicated time, especially in neuroscience, because most of you are from molecular biology, chemistry, mathematics, whatever, so basic sciences, but you don't learn almost anything specific to neuroscience during the undergraduate school. So to get this common theoretical knowledge, I think you need a dedicated time, and I think masters is a good period for that.
Thank you, Atay Hocam, for your contribution.
Okay, I will continue with another question. If is there any attribution from Hale Hocam?
So I would ask, so would we answer also about the medicine students' career, so for residency as well?
Yes, I was just about to ask that actually, but you already answered, so
okay,
we skip that question.
Okay, so I think there's no one way. So I think it's the best if you could do it together, but both are really very strong educative periods. So both residency is a very important period where you will learn about clinical skills and clinical knowledge. So this is a full-time education. PhD is also a full-time education and a full-time job. So it would be best if people could do it together, but of course it's not very efficient. So I think there is no one way, like if you should do the PhD first or the residency later, or residency first and the PhD later. But whatever you choose, I think while doing the other, you should still be touching the other one. So maybe while you are a resident, you could still keep in touch with the current literature and with some of the professors who are already conducting research, or maybe you could still think about some projects which will not take 100% of your time, but this will still nourish you during your residency. This is what I have done. I have tried to do, in fact. So if you just do your PhD and then leave for residency for 5 years without learning any new research skill and without conducting any new research skill and producing anything, I think this would really keep you back, and that PhD would really be lost in time. So I think this is the same for the residency. So whatever you choose, I think you should still keep in touch with the others somehow.
Thank you very much. We will continue with another question. This question from one of the participants, he's asking that, do you agree that in general, neuroscience programs give priority medicine students? Do other faculty students have the same chance to be accepted, such as psychology, which does not include so much neuroscience and science courses? Or you think about it?
So really depends on what kind of neuroscience program you are talking about. Because if you're talking about like behavioral neuroscience or like a kind of like a neuroscience I do basically as a psychologist, I mean, it is for psychologists anyway. So you are expected to actually have a theoretical background in psychology. So you can, what you are interested in is actually psychology related to neuroscience. So I mean, totally, of course. But then in some more medically oriented program, of course, I would imagine it's a little harder to get in, but I could be wrong though. That I actually wouldn't know myself.
Thank you, Dr. Canero.
I agree with Dr. Canero. This really depends on the topic that we are going to study. So personally, as a person who is working interdisciplinary, I mean, especially with psychology, I think psychology can be an advantage, especially in cognitive neuroscience studies, because especially at Koç, I think our students get a very good knowledge about cognitive neuroscience, and if they work with Fuat, he's, I know now a little as an affiliate professor position, but if they can work in his lab or with Sami Hoca or with Tilbe, for example, I know that they learn a lot about cognitive neuroscience and its techniques and its assessments. So I find it very advantageous. So in our neuroscience program also, faculty from psychology can also accept students under neuroscience masters and Ph.D. So ours is a very interdisciplinary program. But at other universities, it may not be that well. I know Atay would also correct me now. Hacettepe and ODTÜ Middle East Technical University used to have a joint program, but now I think they canceled it. I'm not sure. That was also a very interdisciplinary program where a faculty from engineering could also recruit students from med school. So I think this becomes really advantageous. But for our program, we thought that for some students, it could be hard to understand our lectures, like basic neuroscience, which is really very biology based. So we have now generated a new lecture, Introduction to Brain and Behavior, where we introduced about these cellular structures of the brain and other biological aspects that we thought all students from all disciplines should be well knowledged. So I think it's the program's responsibility to educate all students to the required level. Yeah, I don't know if this is the answer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hale Hocam. Anything you want to add, Atay Hocam?
No, I agree.
Okay, then we can pass the next question. So this question asks if the university from which we are graduated is important in the admission process. So does it have any importance, the credibility of the university?
Of course, it has some importance, but it's not, probably it's not more than you think, I can say. Because I think the CV is really more important than the name of the university. So I would, and probably everybody would agree, I would prefer to have a student who have some experience in different labs, who proved to be active during the undergraduate faculty, to a very successful student, but just on paper, but on just grades.
Thank you, Atay Hocam.
Yeah, I agree. So it doesn't, I mean, like it does matter to some extent, but then if you're actually thinking about going abroad, I mean, you have to know that, I mean, the Koç University definitely is a good university, like, well, I mean, in Turkey, but most of the professors you actually apply to wouldn't know. I mean, just because it's a foreign university, basically. So they wouldn't care, basically, because they just don't know much. But then at the same time, that as Haleoja actually mentioned a while ago, that this recommendation letter matter a lot. So in that sense, like for instance, at the coach, there are lots of professors who are well connected with foreign universities as well. So like them actually recommending you, for instance, and saying saying to the professors in the university you want to apply to actually do matter. So like in indirect ways, definitely it does. But then like name of the university itself, as if you are just applying to a foreign university, really doesn't matter.
I really agree.
Dr.
I really agree. Even for Turkey, when we are evaluating applicants from Turkey, we of course care about the university that they graduated, because it also gives us an idea about how hard the student was working. I mean, both in high school and maybe at undergraduate level. But more than that, especially who their professors were. So who they got the knowledge while they were in the undergraduate education, I think really guides us. So if we know that they worked with some professors who we really trusted, I think this also guides me at least. Yeah.
Thank you, Hadi Hocam, also.
Thank you very much. There is another question from our participants. And after graduation from the PhD program, what kind of jobs can we apply?
Not really a research-related question.
Yeah.
But still, this is what most of the participants were wondering about.
It's a relevant question, of course, actually. I think it changes hugely if you're talking about Turkey or abroad. Let's first talk about abroad. You can have a big chance especially in the companies, and you can really earn good money, even better money than if you stay in academia. But in Turkey, it's unfortunately very different. We don't have many choices to study in the companies. So in general, you are expected to be an academician or work for the government, again, like a academician or something else. So in Turkey, it's more like to be an academician scientist, but abroad, it can also be completely different.
Thank you, Atay Hocam.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you please.
So again, just to talk about like my experience in North America. Yes, so Atay Hoja is right. So like abroad, usually it's like there are a lot of opportunities for behavioral neuroscience kind of a field. I guess most common one nowadays is actually becoming, for instance, like a data scientist. So some of my friends actually, went to industrial pathway, even after like a postdoc and doing research and whatever. For instance, one of my closest friend from neuroscience program started working at the Facebook as a data scientist, or so like these kind of like a tech company. Another common one is like a policy making kind of work, or like educational stuff, etc. So some of them are actually more about like towards the government and like that kind of work. And then also more for like a welfare and that kind of thing too. So yeah, it's basically open to many different fields. Though I would say some jobs I would imagine actually if you have a PhD, you might actually have a lower chance of getting, just because it just sounds a little, you are overqualified for some of the jobs. So you should think carefully actually before getting into, if you actually having a second thought about it, second thought about getting into a PhD program, might as well, for instance, just work first to see if it's really something you want to pursue. But otherwise, yes, abroad, there are lots of opportunity, I would say.
Thank you, Dr. Canero. Hello, Hocam, you wanted to add something.
So just for Turkey, maybe I think that currently the job opportunities could be a little bit limited. But in time, I think people will have more awareness about this graduation programs, postgraduate programs, and I hope our graduates will also have higher chance in Turkey as well. As I said, most of the programs are quite new, so I think the job market is also not that much aware about their capabilities, I think, in Turkey.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Hayde Hocam. So I'm gonna ask you the next question from the participants. They're asking if working in a part-time job is possible while studying master's or PhD. And it has also a second question. What are the requirements for scholarships and salaries for master's and PhD?
So I think this is a question that has regulations. So maybe I can answer for our program as its coordinator. So the requirements for our master and PhD programs acceptance are the same. I mean, if you will have a scholarship or not, you still need to have all the required degrees and also grades to be accepted. But for who we provide the scholarships, it really depends about that period's PIs, current projects, and how much they are funded. So at some periods, there's no funded projects, but they are just funded by the university. So this really depends. So this changes how many of the applicants will be accepted with a scholarship and how many will not. So PIs are working a lot to get these funds, get students with scholarships. But still, if a student now has these requirements and the PI thinks that he will be successful or she will be successful in the program and they have a good motivation, they can still accept them without any salaries if the student also accepted. I think this depends also about the university's opportunities in addition to the students' capabilities.
Thank you, Hayde Hocam. What about working in a part-time job while doing the master's or PhD? Do you think it's possible?
So it was not possible in our program until the last 2 years. So it was just full time. But since the last 1 year, in fact, we started recruiting students who could work in part-time jobs while studying master's or PhD. But this really prolongs the duration of the program. And this is really not what we suggest for our students. But just for those who already have a job in industry, for example, who are already working in the clinic and who cannot stop this practice to conduct PhD, but they think that they can spend time on it, then we can accept them for part-time master's and PhD students, but the requirements do not change, and what we expect from the lectures and the thesis period also do not change. But I think PhD is a full-time job. So I don't know what Dr. Canero and Atayoja also thinks.
So yes, I completely agree that it would be better if you can just focus on the degree. I mean, it just gets difficult, but of course, I mean, funding is limited. So sometimes you might have to pay for it and then you might need extra income. Of course, that happens. So, I mean, usually, technically it is possible in a lot of cases, but yes, time consuming and it might get very difficult. Just to again touch on like some foreign programs. So for North America, again, Canada and the US, for PhD programs, so 4, 5, 6 year kind of a program, it's usually funded, meaning that if you are accepted to the program, that means they're going to give you monthly stipend. So you get a salary. It's kind of like a job. But then so like it's kind of automatic basically if we are talking about like a good research universities. Masters usually not the case, so it kind of depends. Some schools are that way automatically, some schools are not. But PhD, so that was actually one of the reasons I went for American University, because I knew I didn't need to pay for it. So in that sense, and the salary, the amount I think was a part of a question too. So in Turkey, it's regulated. So it's the same amount basically for everyone. Either master's or PhD. I mean, it has a cap. But then in the US, it usually depends on, for instance, the location of the university. So if you are, for instance, like middle of New York, of course, the living expense is much higher than like, middle of nowhere in Midwest or something. So basically they would actually pay you more. But then usually, big cities gets even more expensive than what the university expects. So it's not really like you can have like a good life, but then you can survive kind of amount usually.
Thank you, Dr. Conero.
Thank you very much. There's another question. It's very specific about experimental animals. It is, can I work on a neuroscience without working on experimental animals?
I mean, you mean animals not including humans, right?
Yes,
I think.
yes.
Interesting.
But I guess
Like
you could do like a
rats.
cellular molecular kind of a thing too, but you don't need to work with animals, I would say. Well, it depends on the question, but of course.
Okay, then.
Then
Is
we
there
can ask the next question. So do you think it's a significant drawback not to have a published article prior to the master's or PhD application?
No.
No.
So it's
No?
an extra, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would look nice, of course, but then, I mean, yeah, really doesn't mean much if you don't have one.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our professors. So, okay, or my peer Orhan can ask this question actually about the COVID issues.
We want to ask about the COVID pandemics. How did the pandemics affect the laboratory workings and laboratory projects? And
maybe
applying to a
acceptance
laboratory
rate.
as a student?
I'm sorry, Orhan. And maybe
No
the
problem.
acceptance rates of
Yes.
the programs.
I don't know if the rate changes that much for graduate school. I mean, in my school, not really. And abroad as well, I don't think that much of the case. But of course, lab opportunities got this very much limited. So, for my kind of, I'm not doing much neuroscience research anyway to start with, actually. But still, in general, that not only coming to the lab and doing stuff got difficult because of regulation and just because of safety reasons, but also for our stuff, so like using like EEG, MRI, and that kind of things are what we do. So getting participants very, very difficult. So in that way, like it was just very, very limited. So a lot of the labs were just doing online work. But then, for instance, if you're working on like a computational neuroscience and actually working on big data already being collected and just processing the data, again, better to have a better computer, but otherwise, I mean, you can do it online. So it really depends on the kind of topic you are interested in.
Thank you, Dr. Conero.
I agree the same. I think until now, the acceptance rate has not changed, but I don't know for the next months and years. I mean, due to the change in the pandemic, because we already have some current students whose projects have been delayed, who will now continue with their salaries probably. And I hear also many European universities maybe also discussed if they should prolong the contracts of their students so that they could feel more relieved to conduct their research in a more unstressed way, because many of our students are also stressed, thinking if they will have the chance to graduate or not, if they will complete the research or not. So maybe I think in the next 6 months and the year, I think it could decrease the acceptance rate a little bit, maybe, considering these facts. For our lab also, we are recruiting bariatric surgery patients, and all the surgeries have been canceled for some months. So we had to wait for them, or we are working with 22q11 deletion patients who already have some immune deficiency. So we are really worried for them if we if we call them to come to hospital, and if we cause any infection somehow, even though we care about every step. So and also in some of the animal studies, so in the 4th floor of the Koç hospital, so the number of students who can work together is now limited, which causes a little bit delay. So I think maybe in the next 6 months or 1 year, the acceptance rate could be a little bit lower for those who are working with human participants and with animal models. I think we will see.
Thank you, Hale Hocam. Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much. We finished our questions and we have just few minutes. As a last, is there anything you want to add, you want to recommend and mention as a main points for or to us as a graduate, undergraduate students? Anything we didn't mention in the question, maybe?
First, I would like to thank for letting us meet Dr. Canero. It was really a good experience also to meet all of you. And I would just say PhD needs dedication, I think, and really courage. And the principal investigator that you are going to work with also matters. I mean, the communication is also, I think, very important in the process. And not comparing yourself with other peers during these processes is also very important. I mean, maybe one of you gets accepted while the other doesn't. So don't feel too stressed during these processes. And also during the research, everyone's flow could be different. So look at yourself, look at what you need, what you want, and follow your own path. This is what I can say from mental point of view.
Thank you, Hale Hocam. And it was such a pleasure to host all of you here. And it was a really beneficial session for all of the participants, I believe. If there's nothing else that you want to add, we again thank you so much for dedicating your time here for an hour. And so I think then we can pass to the next session of our event. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank
to
you
all
very
of
much.
our guests.
Have a good day.
So I think the
joined a bit earlier because I feel some of the things that I will cover in my presentation were touched upon by the professors. So it will be a bit of a summary or a kind of repetition in some way, so those things I might go faster because they were very clearly explained, and the way that the professors recommended how to make some decisions or some choices, I think was very well covered. So what I wanted to talk about was a kind of how do you go about applying to graduate programs? And this is based on the advice that we give as a university to prospective international applicants who want to come to Koç University, for example, for a neuroscience program. And also based on the typical questions, concerns, guidance that requests that we get from prospective applicants. So I was missing seeing Obama, so I'm going to use Obama as the kind of host for this presentation. He has a lot of, he's very viral, you know, and I love his memes and stuff like that. So I feel like I can find an Obama for every occasion. So of course, you're all maybe in your 3rd or 4th year of your undergraduate degree. Maybe you just graduated or are going to graduate right now. So you have a lot of choices in front of you in terms of, first of all, if you do want to pursue graduate school right after graduation, or if you want to wait a bit of time and have some work experience. So this is all about choices. And what I want to provide here is just a framework in terms of what are the type of questions that you can ask yourself to make the right choice or the right decision. Of course, you know, as I said, you know, we've covered some of those, whether you should stay in Turkey, for your graduate school, or at least, at least for the master's, and then continue a PhD abroad, or just go abroad straight. And within that concept of abroad, there's differences in every aspect when it comes to whether you choose North America, or more specifically the US, EU countries. Within that, for example, there's big differences between UK versus, Germany, or versus Nordic country systems, or Asia, which is an emerging region for international students for STEM degrees, including neuroscience. Another big choice that you have to make is how you're going to fund your studies, whether you're going to be able to look for a self-funded, something that you will pay for yourself from different sources, or receive a scholarship, or have support from the institution. As the professors mentioned, whether you want to join a program that it's quite broad in the sense that it's interdisciplinary, and once you're in, you can kind of choose which specific area of neuroscience you want to focus on, or a very narrow program where you're kind of fixed from the start in terms of what you're going to be working on. And of course, the commitment of time that you want to make to this. So I feel like this was all kind of touched upon by the faculty members before. So of course, the first thing you would want to do is to select which programs you want to apply to. And please see here that I'm not using the word which university, but which program. So I will touch upon that as a final recommendation, but here what's important, rather than the university's reputation as a whole, right? It's that program's standing and reputation and quality of research and quality of faculty members when you're making those decisions. What you see on the left-hand side is a series of questions that I would recommend that you answer for yourself. And after you have answered them, that will really help you to narrow down the type of programs you want to apply to. And the great thing about this is that once you have answered those questions, you're kind of starting to write your statement of purpose or motivation letter, because these are partly some of the things that admission committees and professors want to know about you as an applicant. So for example, like when we're talking about a program, neuroscience, like why do I want to do a graduate program in neuroscience? What specific field of research am I interested in? And for example, if you're thinking of going abroad, why can't I pursue this in my own country? So whether it's an issue of there's not enough programs, the programs may not be funding students. So if you cannot self-fund your program, if you don't have that opportunity, what are the reasons? Which professors are pursuing this field, and how does their work align with my interests? So if you have, for example, read papers in your courses, in your undergraduate courses, that really impressed you and got you thinking, and these are people who are affiliated with universities, you start to look at them and see what they're doing. Importantly, of course, what am I looking to gain out of this academic experience? Is it because I want to come back to Turkey and work in academia, or is it because I want to work in industry afterwards? I just want to do it because of the sheer intellectual curiosity of learning more and becoming very knowledgeable in that. It's important that's a good question. What do you want to get out of doing a master's or a PhD in neuroscience? Similar to that, what are my career goals? How has my background prepared me to develop this interest? Because that also determines the type of program you apply to. If as professors were saying, if you want to go into a more clinically oriented program versus a more, for example, cognitive or psychology oriented program. And so what does your background, if you're a medicine student, which program would be a better fit for you? If you want to change completely, or if you want to continue in that line. Similarly, how have my skills prepared me to learn and further pursue this field? So if you feel that during your undergraduate studies, you have really, really sharpened your learning skills, for example, critical reading or critical thinking, teamwork, communication skills, time management, stress management, these are all kind of software, very important skills, and specific lab or technical skills that can also tell you for which program you're better prepared for than others. And this is a very difficult question to answer. And I think my friend Tas, who is going to be talking about, maybe talking after me, is going to go into a bit more detail, because this is the hardest part. What is special about me as an applicant that sets me apart from the rest? When you think of very good programs, either in Turkey or abroad, they get hundreds of applications. So, and they're all from usually very good students. So, everyone has a similar profile in the sense of good, good or excellent grades. They all have good or excellent standard test scores, good or excellent recommendation letters. So what is it about you specifically in terms of your life experience, background, that would add value to that group of people that you're going to be working with? That's, for me, that's the hardest question to answer, that we don't often see clearly articulated in cover letters, a statement of purposes, or even communications that the candidates have with universities beforehand. So, my recommendation is try to start answering those questions, put pen and paper, write it for yourself. This can take a few weeks to really, write down. And where do you start searching for different programs? Or you may have already started hearing from professors, from friends who already graduated about good programs in Turkey or abroad. So there are a lot of sources, but usually we strongly recommend that, of course, you check the specific program website, their social media. There are some very large programs that, maybe not the neuroscience program, but the school or the graduate school that they're in would have their own social media channels. Of course, the main university, if there's an international admissions website, check that as well, because if you're considering going abroad, it will tell you in what way they view and support and value or not international students. And there's a big difference when you compare, for example, American universities and UK universities versus Asian universities in that regard. For example, as Turkish students, you will see that Asian universities do not pay any attention to you because you're still not a big enough group in their universities to matter. But for other countries, you are. So that makes a difference in how the communications that you will have with the university. And of course, nowadays, there's more either general or niche sort of program review websites, or even social media groups where current students and alumni can comment about their experience. And that's very important, that you hear not just the kind of marketing PR view or version of the program where, of course, every program is great, it's excellent, everything is perfect, but you also want to hear what are the pain points, what are the stressful, what are the less than great aspects of either the program, the professors, or the university. It's very important that you go in with kind of the full picture. Okay, so it's not with realistic expectations. So this is Obama doing his internet search, as you will probably do or have started doing. Now, as I mentioned, how not to select a neuroscience program. Hale Hoja, she just mentioned it very well. Do not compare yourself to others. If friends of yours got into XYZ Ivy Leagues or not Ivy Leagues or whatever, like, okay, that's good, but that's their journey. You really have to look at what you want. So in this sense, as I said, overall university ranking is not the best indicator that the program is going to be a good fit for you, because you have to think you're going to spend either 2 or 3 years or even 6 years in that university and in that program. But what matters most is the program itself and the faculty members or the supervisor that you will be with. Again, if they offer a scholarship or not shouldn't be the first criteria to eliminate a program. I mean, in terms of applying to a program, they may not openly say that they can provide you a scholarship, but they may do in the end. But the important thing is to apply. So, if you don't immediately see that a specific program offers a full scholarship, if everything else works for you, I would say, yeah, still apply. Again, based on cultural affinity or familiarity. As Atta Hoja mentioned, it's hard to adapt to a different culture and country and language and food and customs and everything. So, but it's not impossible. So we see some, for example, here at Koç University, we see a lot of applicants coming from countries around Turkey. And one of the reasons they mentioned they're applying to us is because they say, well, we have shared history, we have a shared religion. And I often think they're going to have a crush, you know, like they're going to have very hard culture shock when they get here, because yes, there are some things in which we are similar, but there are many, many others in which we're not. So that shouldn't be a kind of main deciding factor. As I said, if people you admire went there, a professor graduated from there, that's not the main reason you should apply to a specific program, or just because you have seen they have kind of star faculty members. That can tell you about the quality of research, doesn't tell you about the quality of supervision that you're going to have as a master's or as a PhD student. Okay, so once you have a short list of programs, you know, you started doing all of your search, etc., you narrow it down to, you know, could be 4 or 5 programs that you want to apply to. There's different types of questions that you now want to do some deeper research about. The answer to these questions can come from the websites, the social media, brochures, etc. Some of it, you will not see it published. So that's where we advise to get in touch with either the International Admissions Office of the university or the specific program admissions contact, whether that's a professor or a team or whoever it is, okay? And I've grouped it into different categories. There's some practical info that you want to know about the admissions process. And this is the thing that you want to know earliest, because if you see that, okay, I'm going to need, you know, for example, if one of the requirements, of course, it's a standard test score, such as GRE, that takes time to prepare. So you want to know, you know, not a month before the application deadline that you need a GRE test score. So you want to have enough time for that. So I'm not going to read all of the questions. What I wanted to highlight here, which is in red, are the ones that I think are important to know well in advance. So for example, in some European universities, let's say, for example, the Netherlands, which has very good neuroscience programs, some universities do require you to have the approval of a potential supervisor before you apply. Like you have to contact them, pitch your kind of research proposal and what you want to work with. And if they give you the green light, then you're encouraged to apply. Whereas in universities that follow more of an American kind of style of admissions, including Koch, that's not the case. You don't need to have a formal supervisor approval, especially for a PhD. And the other reason scholarships are important in this sense is that they may have different deadlines or different or a separate application process for the scholarships. This is the case, for example, with UK PhD programs, in which, you know, you apply for the program in one way, and then there's a separate process for funding because it may come from national project or national sources. Then there is another kind of category of questions, which is more about the reputation and the experience of the program. And this is where you want to contact real people who have gone through it. One thing you can ask, for example, is our alumni office can tell you if we've had one of our students currently or graduated from that program, and you can ask directly from your opinion. Of course, it's always easier to ask questions from people from your own university. And you can ask, they may already say it on the website, but if not, you can ask, can you contact a current student or a recent alumni? Most universities are happy to arrange that between prospective students. Some universities, of course, especially in the past 2 years, have started to offer like sample lectures, webinars, you know, to give more information, and the same thing with faculty members. I have put, I don't know if many of you will know this game. I hope you have at least seen it once in your lives, called Pac-Man. So you guys are kind of, you know, you're Pac-Man trying to get that cherry, which is picking and being admitted to a very nice program. But you have a lot of different, it's a kind of a maze, and you have different units like the admissions office, the program office, the faculty members, that you're thinking like, where do I start? Like, who do I ask? The answer is you may have to ask several people. You may not get all the answers just from one office. That's our experience. Then two important categories of questions you want to find out about through the website or by asking directly. And I think it's important, the teaching style of the program, especially for masters, for example. Do they have the range of courses? Usually they will publish the curriculum so you can see what are the required and elective courses offered. Are you going to be part of a learning community during the program or even afterwards? Like, are there formal, informal groups so that you can, that you can continue with that network during and after graduation? And, sorry. And of course, what the learning style would be like. Now you have all, I think most of you have now had the experience of sort of traditional face-to-face learning and then online learning or some hybrid version of that. And you might already have a preference, it's like what works best for you, what can you live with and what you can really not cope with. So if the program or the programs that you're interested in offer different versions of that, it might help you to decide if you really want to apply to that program or not. Then, especially for PhD programs, you want to know about what is the research or work style, what's the work culture in that program and in the lab or with the professor that you're thinking of working with. So these are the type of questions that you may want to ask either to current students or alumni about, for example, how many hours per week are they expected to work as teaching assistants or research assistants? What are the TA duties? This is something that on the website they may say, 20 hours a week, but in reality, it's a lot more than that. So these are the type of questions where you're going to get an honest answer from peers. I mean, from people who are in the program or have graduated from the program. And finally, still important is, your personal, family, or home needs. This might not be your case, but there are some students who may have partners, already families. So that changes also the decision-making in terms of which program to apply. If you would do a part-time or online type program versus a full-time one. And of course, funding. Funding is a key question for everything. If, for example, you decide that you don't want to go to graduate school right away after graduation and you start working, one of the things you may want to ask your employer is, further down the line, if I wanted to do a master's, would you be able to support me in some way? Maybe not in terms of covering the full tuition, but providing some type of time off, unpaid leave to go and develop myself professionally. These are questions that you can keep in mind as you're searching for job opportunities after graduation. In terms of scholarships, that's a whole different, that's a separate presentation that we could do on this. But I highlighted here the program that you're applying to, they will have their own scholarship categories according to program, according to nationality. So you may want to check on their website or ask directly, do you have any scholarships, for example, for Turkish students? They may or may not have them. Or do you have an agreement with the Turkish government for funded, programs in STEM? There are also, of course, international scholarship programs, especially for master programs from countries like the UK, US, Germany, China, that you can apply to that can help cover the cost of tuition and living expenses. So this is just the kind of, that funding is another consideration that you should have. Here is Obama annoyed. That's the face that we make usually when we get this type of questions. Because these are the questions that either faculty members nor admission officers want to receive on a phone call, email, or conversation before you have been admitted. What type of questions? The first ones are because nobody's going to tell you yes or no to that. You won't find it on the website, of course, but like things like, is there discrimination based on nationality? Is there discrimination based on scholarship versus self-funding candidates? Nobody, you're not going to get an honest answer for this. So better not ask it at least from the institution. You may ask it in terms of perceptions from alumni or from current students. Other things like, do you guarantee employment or placement after graduation? The answer to that is always going to be, we don't know. It's up to you. We provide you with resources and you either use them wisely or you don't, kind of thing. For example, we have a question here in Turkey, which for us is very difficult, which is, can you provide additional on-campus work opportunities? And the answer is yes and no. Legally, yes, we can. Technically, it's hard. Nobody wants to get into the bureaucracy of that. It may be also the case in other countries abroad. Other countries are trying to encourage, I mean, they facilitate international students to work during their studies, but as you know, in the previous session, that was one of the questions, it may not be possible, not technically, but you may not have time to really work part-time. Other practical things like, do you provide support with the visa application process or with accommodation? Those are all valid questions. What I'm saying is, don't ask them before you have been admitted to the program. Ask them afterwards. I mean, after you're admitted, the whole university is behind you to get you to enroll and to really start your program. Here, I just wanted to give an overview of what are the typical graduate application requirements. This is, for example, a mix of what we ask for our own neuroscience program and from other STEM related programs at our university. These are more typical of what you would see in US admissions and some Canadian universities. And some questions about this were already answered in terms of the importance of each element. One thing I think wasn't mentioned was interviews. Interviews are typically part of the process once you have been shortlisted. So, you know, they have checked your CV, your scores, your grades, everything is great. They want to now know you a bit more to see if there's that chemistry. You know, can I work with this person for a long period of time? And again, we can have a whole new session, which is about interview preparation and what type of interview questions will be asked for neuroscience and, you know, whether it's character or knowledge-based questions, but it's important that you also keep it in mind. So the thing to remember here is that usually good programs are selective. So they do really want to have the best candidates because they are investing in you as people to become good researchers and to help PIs to do great research and create new knowledge. So they're careful about who they admit. And in order to do that, they don't base decisions on just one thing. So this is why holistic is typically what you would see, you know, how admissions are described at most good research universities. So the admission or application requirements that you typically see on the websites are trying to measure these 4 things, you know, like that you have the foundation, you know, of knowledge needed for a neuroscience program, or at least that you have shown interest in the field by taking maybe out of your course, if you were studying medicine or if you studied mathematics, but you started to take some online training, online courses, anything like that, that shows, you know, interest in the topic. Then language proficiency is important, especially if it's going to be a program in a language other than your native language. And then, of course, attitudes and behaviors. As the professor very clearly explained, it's not just about having good grades, but it's the attitude in terms of continuous learning, creativity, commitment, focus, teamwork, good communication skills, attention to detail. These are things that you want to highlight in your application. What you see on the boxes is this is where they're looking for those things. So they will look for your attitudes and behaviors in that statement of purpose. They will look for it in how your referees talk about you. In the type of extracurricular activities you have taken part of, for example, if they're mostly like individual versus team-based, if they're mostly competitive versus non-competitive, you know, these are the clues that they get from looking at your application file. And of course, during the interview. Then there is a kind of very vague and very difficult thing to assess, which is potential and preparedness for the program, because they will never be 100% sure after they have sent an offer letter that it's going to work out well, that you're going to be a great team member in that lab. It may not be, you know. But the ways that they try to gauge this is, again, the interview is a big part of that, recommendation letters and writing samples. So in some cases, some programs, especially PhD programs, want to see if there's a lot of, you know, academic writing required, that you have had some experience of that and what's the quality of the work you have done before. In terms of timeline, Here's Obama taking a standard test. And what I wanted to show here was the type of pressure we all feel when, you know, from, especially in Turkey, I think from parents and relatives that, you know, I know the pressure is, you know, comes in from very early on. Like, you know, you guys are preparing for the latest exam and it's like the whole family is invested in this process. So that kind of continues into graduate school, but I guess less so. I would hope so. So as I said, when you look at the timeline, the thing that takes the longest to prepare is the test. So especially a GRE test for you guys, because you studied at Koç, you're used to, you know, if most of you took the QEP exam, you're used to the structure of a TOEFL or like English proficiency exam. GRE can be a bit different. So this is, for example, the timeline I'm showing here, it's for our neuroscience program because we have sort of May, June, deadlines, and in some cases early application deadlines. The thing that is the last thing, let's say, that you need to do is requesting recommendation letters, because what's important here is that you inform your professors that you're going to ask them to provide a recommendation, and then just, you know, remind them so that they submit them before the deadline. Here I highlighted, you know, that you should try as possible, if that program has an early and a regular application deadline, to apply by the early deadline. The reason is, for many programs, this is when they have more money available. As one of our professors mentioned, some years they have more money, some years they have less money. If you apply early, it's more likely that you're going to get funded in terms of stipend, because the PIs, you know, like if you apply in the last day of the deadline of the last thing, by then, yes, they may have spots, but without funding. So this is why we recommend usually that people try to apply by the early deadline. Finally, you know, we at Koç University, we want our students to do always, you know, the best in whatever they do after they leave the university. So we do have a lot of offices here that can help you in the process of applying to graduate schools in different ways. So, you know, I think you also had a session before with the Koç University Writing Center, but I just want to emphasize that they are there to help you in that process of writing the statement purpose. It doesn't mean you go to them and say, how can I write this? I mean, you should come with the draft and then you work on it with them. They also organize kind of webinars and information sessions. I will show briefly their presentation at the end. And of course, you know, you do have academic supervisors or mentors in your programs that you can ask for, you know, at second, third, the more pairs of eyes that can see that document before you send it, the better. Because even though you think you have read it 100 times and there's no typos, everything makes sense, somebody else can come at it and look at it and say, I didn't understand what you mean here, this is repetitive, etc. But I think Taz is going to talk about that a bit later. For your academic CV, for example, our Career Development Center can be a great resource in terms of polishing a draft that you can bring to them and giving, you know, resources and examples. For standard test scores preparation, we do have our Office of Learning and Teaching. And for example, one of the key things in terms of preparation is time management for this. I mean, I think you should already have developed some of those skills by now, but it's good to use their coaching and tutoring services in that sense. Our library also has a lot of resources, free resources. You don't have to be buying kind of paid courses on, you know, GRE prep and things like that. We do have a lot of that already in our library. The bureaucratic things like transcripts and diplomas or registrar's office, you know, my advice here is ask them well in advance, because it does take time to get these things. And you may need to provide, for example, like a temporary graduation document saying, you know, I'm in my last semester, but these are my grades so far, so that you can apply if you're going to apply right away before, you know, after graduation. Of course, as the professor said, one of the strongest things that you have in your favor is your Koç University professors, because they are extremely well networked. And you know, their endorsement of you as a candidate can mean the difference of being admitted or not. That's what we have seen before. And for interview preparation, as I said, you can also seek support from our Career Development Center and your own faculty members. Now, this is Obama getting his offer letter, as you will, I hope, for your ideal program. So as I said, I've put together some questions to help you decide what type of program you need or would be best for you. But, maybe also be open to other options that could be a better fit in the longer term. That refers to maybe teaching styles, duration, location. I put Asia there on purpose. I don't know how many of you have seriously considered Asian universities. Here I'm talking about Japan, Korea, Singapore, China as options for your graduate school, but it is a very valid option, as well as our own program. And I'm going to talk about it very briefly after this. These things take time. So websites can be complicated. Not all universities have very user-friendly websites, especially for international applicants. That I have seen, for example, European universities are great at research, but not all of them are very user-friendly. For example, German universities have excellent programs, but you try to understand their admission system and sometimes it's impossible. And that's why, if you need more information, do contact the academic admissions or, the international admissions staff with some of the questions that I mentioned, not the ones not to ask, okay? And, just take time to really reflect and make the right choice. Finally, here's my plug for today, which is going to take very short time, which is, if after all of that research, you realize, okay, I don't feel like I need to go abroad at least for my master's program, do know that our Graduate School of Health Sciences has a master's with thesis in neuroscience, as well as others. And you have met now one of the faculty members, but I just wanted to give a kind of overview of the program in terms of the courses, what they're focused on, some of the research areas that they're working on, the laboratory access. You may already know some of these labs, of course, and invite you to, if you haven't already, to start following the Graduate School of Health Sciences on Instagram, because that's where they're putting a lot of information about, the neuroscience and also all the other programs. But importantly, what I want to highlight is, like neuroscience at Koch is actually one of our pillars of excellence. It's one of the areas where we are now at a global level publishing and having impact research that that can be compared to the best Ivy League universities in the US, top research universities in the UK, and so on. Last, there's two programs that the university launched recently. One in immunology and another one in global health. This is just for you to know that these new programs are available, so that you can consider them if you decide not to go for neuroscience and other areas. Those are also available. So yes, so I would like now to have any questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for the detailed presentation, Ms. Abash. It was really beneficial and helpful for all of the participants, I'm sure.
Sorry, just one thing I forgot. I wanted to show you. I'm going to share with Denise via email afterwards a couple of presentations. This is specifically, which I thought would be useful for you guys to have, which is about how to write research proposals, because some programs do not ask you for a statement of purpose or a motivation letter. They ask specifically about research proposal. And I found this presentation to be quite kind of useful, in terms of what does it need to cover. So, and then there's some key concepts here that it was the first time that I saw them explained clearly. So I think they will be useful for you. And the other one, it's as I mentioned, from our Koch University Writing Center. This is a presentation that they usually do in their workshop about the statement of purpose. So, you can have that. And I think Taz is also going to cover some of this now, but I'll send this afterwards, okay?
Thank you so much for your attention and all of the care with all the presentations. Now that we have only 5 minutes before our third session, I think I can ask you one question that we frequently received from the participants. Is that, does it make the application impressive to have a unique story or reason within the program application, or more than the GPA itself?
Okay. I think for STEM, programs. You shouldn't be telling your life story in the sense of, for example, like personal challenges that you faced or that you were able to overcome in order to, get your university grade education. So like if you have a knowledge or skills based personal story that it's relevant about how you would add value to that lab, then yes. But something like, and Tasmi will talk about this too, but something like my grandmother always taught me about the value of hard work, and she I don't know, moved from this city to this other city and made it like, I mean, no, like the reason is like when you consider the lack of time that professors have to look at, I mean, the very little time that they have to read hundreds of statement of purposes and CVs from candidates. So, the story that you're going to tell has to be relevant to what you're applying for. Okay. It needs to grab their attention very quickly to say, like this person has worked with such and such, or has, they already know this and this skill or this lab, and they have experience in this and this and that. Okay, good. So yeah. So and the reason is, for example, if you feel that you don't have the greatest GPA, okay, that's something you can explain in your statement of purpose, but perhaps don't start with that. Like if there is a valid reason why your GPA dipped, in, let's say, in the middle in your sophomore year and your junior year, that's fine. I mean, things happen, but don't start with that, is what I would say. Okay, because what's important is you put it right at the topic, because either you get the professor's attention there or you don't. I mean.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bashi. And so in these 3 minutes, I can ask you one last question before farewelling you. The participants also ask the importance of the certifications from workshops and independent courses in master's and PhD applications.
Yeah, I think, more and more, they will have more weight or more, they will have more weight in the professor's decision process, because again, overall, we're moving towards kind of micro credentials, micro degrees. So especially if you are studying a degree that it's not directly related to neuroscience, but you can show through certificates, training that you have done, that you have developed yourself, shown desire to learn, to develop your knowledge in that area, then that's a great kind of way to balance your application if you're coming from a very different discipline than neuroscience.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions and for a very detailed presentation. Again, I believe it was really helpful for all the participants. And thank you for your time, for being here for like 40 minutes on a Friday evening. Thank you so much, and hope to see you in our next event.
I'll stay a bit for a while because I like to see my friend Tassi. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this as well. So I'll go stop share now.
She will be given a presentation about how to write an application essay, and she's done she's received a Bachelor of Arts in journalism in University of South Carolina, and has done many jobs in the field. So she's a real expert in the field, and she will give a very detailed presentation to you.
Hi everyone, thank you Denise for the introduction. I hope my internet doesn't cut out. I've been having some issues, but I will just start the presentation now. And let's make sure I can use Zoom properly. All right, so I'm going to cover a little bit of what Melissa went over when she was talking earlier, but as she said, and as Denise introduced, my specialty is really in writing. I am an editor, and I have edited a lot of essays and application essays, grant proposals, and theses for students over the years. And I'll just be going over the basic writing prompts that you'll be getting in your applications, and what is expected in those essays in general. And if you have any more specific questions, of course, I can answer those. So before you start your essay, like you really need to first know what it is that you're going to be writing. And as previous speakers talked about, what's the application that you're working on? Hopefully by this point you know what, if it's a postgrad application, a grant proposal, scholarship application, where the institution is, as others talked about, whether it's in the US or another country, Asia, in Turkey, the expectations are a little bit different. I usually talk a lot about what US expectations are, but I kind of cut that out of this presentation just to keep it short. And also I think at the graduate level, they're not really that different. It's really more at the undergraduate level that it is. Then you need to know what documents you need. And also if they've given you a prompt, or are they asking for just a cover letter or a statement of purpose, a personal statement? What do all of those mean? Maybe the Coach Writing Center, I think it was. I don't know if you guys all attended a session with them before, but maybe they've gone over some of this stuff, so I'll be a little quick about it. And then also before you get started with your writing, what you want to do is make sure that you've reached out to people in admissions, professors or PIs that you're hoping to work under, because those are kind of the folks who will really give you the most value in terms of, are you applying to the right program? Are you focusing your application in the right direction? And are you making sure that you're tailoring what it is that you're working on based on your own research versus the institution that you're at. So the first and most important question before getting started is to ask yourself, why this? Everything that you write should make it obvious to the reader that you know the answer to this question. So why are you applying to this program? Why are you interested in this field of study, etc.? Some other questions that involve why this. How did you get interested in the field? Why do you want to dedicate 2 to 6 years of your life and then your future career to it? You may never make money in your research area or get funding to focus on it 100% of the time. So how committed to it are you? And all of these answers should underscore just not just why you want to do the work and research, but what makes you a unique candidate for it. As Melissa said, like, you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of people applying at really prestigious universities into programs that a lot of you are probably interested in. So what about you makes you a unique candidate for these admissions folks and for these PIs? So we'll go into some of the expectations in these essays, and I kind of combined. I usually have a slide with US expectations, but this is in general what the expectations are across the board. Obviously, your academic record and your potentials are the deciding factors for a lot of folks, but that should be kind of the vehicle for the academic and research story that you're telling in your essays. So everything that you're doing ties back to your academic or your research record. And you want to, even if you're trying to tell a personal story, like Melissa said, we're not here to talk about your life and how it unfolded and where you came from and who you are. We're really trying to talk about how those things got you interested in what it is that you're studying. So you want to, again, tell a strong story of your academic and research achievements, the potential, and your interest in studying whatever it is you're applying to. And then also through that, you want to highlight your passion for the subject without really using the word passion. I'll go over some words that are a little overly used or cliched later on, but we're talking about what it is you're passionate about, but also there are ways to do it that show that you're passionate about it instead of just saying, I've always been passionate about the sciences. You want to convince the person who's reading your essay that you are passionate about it and that you are excited about it and that you just don't say that you are. You can do that through talking about projects that you've done outside of the actual classes that you've taken as an undergrad, or labs that you've worked in, or volunteer work that you've done, research that you've done. So there's lots of things that you can get into. And as Melissa said, don't talk about your grandma and how she's an influential person in your life, unless maybe your grandmother is a really famous neuroscientist and she pushed you into the field. But maybe even that then. So one of the biggest expectations is your background in research. So what makes a strong application to a PhD program in neuroscience is this fun little document abstract I found online, and they kind of laid out what is consistent among applications that they've received and students that they've accepted into their programs, and that is that applicants have done the research outside of the classroom, and you really want to highlight that any chance that you get, and you want to use your statement of purpose or your personal statement to kind of talk about your research experience. And the thing that they're really looking for is not just like, did you do research and find some really groundbreaking results or anything, but like, do you have love for the scientific process? And is this really what it is you want to spend your time doing? And so anytime you have an opportunity to talk about that, you want to take it and you want to do it in a way that's effective. So the most important information in an application is the research that you're doing. And you want to try to provide a cohesive cohesive list of things that you've done. And you can answer these questions. What was the big question of your research? What choices were made in the experiments? What controls were done? What were the specific controls used? Like, be specific about what you did. Instead of using jargon, like, talk the way that you should be talking about all of these things, and do this for each piece of research that you've done. Maybe you want to focus on one specific thing, but you can talk about multiple kinds of projects that you've worked on. You don't have to go into every little detail about each project. But if you've done a lot of work, make sure that you talk about the work that you've done instead of just focusing on one specific thing. So now that we've gone into the things that you want to make sure that you talk about. Sorry?
I think it was a mistake.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now that we've gone over some of the things that are expected of you to talk about in your essays, we'll go into the types of essays that you might encounter. So there's really the two kinds, and that's the personal statement and the statement of purpose. The personal statement, you want to talk about your individual background, special reasons for pursuing this program or this grant. The statement of purpose goes into your career goals and how you're prepared for the program. And the way that these overlap is why you belong in the program that you're applying for. And so the statement of purpose is called a lot of things. It can be called a motivation letter. It can be called your application essay, objectives for graduate study, letter of intent, statement of intent. There's a lot of things that it's called, and it usually boils down to the same thing and the same kind of questions that you want to answer. And sometimes places might also ask for a cover letter and a statement of purpose, which isn't super usual, but it could happen. Cover letters in general, it might be something a little less intensive than a statement of purpose. A statement of purpose should really give a good history of your interest in a field and where you want to take that interest. And it shouldn't be your CV regurgitated, though. So you want to think of the statement of purpose like a cover letter, like I said, but it should be a little bit more full of information. And you start off with a little bit of an autobiography or an anecdote, but the essay should really be about your relevant and technical career goals. And it should include a few things. It should focus on your specific areas of research within a particular field, and it should detail how your academic and professional experiences have developed in that research in particular, and how that's pushed you to pursue academia at a higher level. And you should explain how those research interests can be pursued at the place that you're applying. So really you want to focus on what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it, what brought you there. But then, you might want to spend a few sentences at the end, as Melissa said, like talking about the institution that you're applying at, making sure that, this is the work that I'm doing. I'm going to be doing it regardless of where I go, but this is why I'm applying to your program. So you want to show that you're excited about this research, but also that, I'm not compromising my research because I need to be at the school, but my research aligns with what the school has to offer me. And let's see, some tips for your statement of purpose. Tell the reader why you want to pursue this graduate degree, obviously. I can send you this presentation as well, so you can kind of read the nitty gritty. I won't read it all to you, but you might maybe want to list specific people at the program whose work you are interested in, or who you might want to work under, specific aspects of the program that are unique to that institution that other institutions don't have. You can describe your interest and how it developed in that discipline. Again, not your life story, but like specifically what about you and your interests that led you to this point in your academic career, and prove that you will be a valuable student. So, again, show your work, show how you've done research before, show how you've been involved in this field, show what you're capable of doing, and what do you plan to do with this degree. You want to be really as specific as you can be without, boxing yourself into a path that might not be realistic or that might not be in line with the goals of what the institution has for you. So, don't just be like, I want to work in academia or something. Like, what is it about the research you're doing that gets you going? And then with the personal statement is different from the statement of purpose in that you're putting the person in your personal statement. That's kind of just how we remember it. But, this is a bit more of a bio. You can use this as an opportunity to talk more about your story. But again, always relating back to why you're applying to this program and why you want to do the research that you're doing. A strong personal statement should focus on the intersection of your personal, academic, and professional life, and it should talk about the various life experience that you've had that have developed your career, your character, how you study, how you research, your love for the scientific method, as we talked about in the first slide, and explain how your background particularly suits you for this program, and if it will allow you to contribute a unique perspective to that community. Some more about the personal statement. Again, tell a story. It's a good way to kind of show off your writing skills. And if you don't feel like you have writing skills, that's okay. Like, there are great formulas for how to kind of nail your personal statement. And I think the Coach Writing Center could probably help you with that. And you want to add details to engage the reader's interest. So, you don't really want to start off with, I have always been interested in neuroscience, or, it's an honor to apply for the neuroscience program at X institution, just because this is a moment for you to really shine narratively. So you want to, bring the person out of yourself into your personal statement and share your motivation, your dreams, but again, be brief. So getting started with your writing, you got to brainstorm first. We've answered all of the questions from the beginning of this presentation about, where are we applying? Why are we applying here? What am I applying for? So now you can just look up ways to brainstorm if you haven't before, just free write, make word webs, think about your strengths, your accomplishments, your dreams. It's almost like a journaling process, like really figure out what it is that you want to say and also why it is that you're applying for this program. Like, all of that you kind of really need to understand before you kind of get started with the actual writing of your statements of purpose. Make sure you're answering any questions that are being asked of you. So if instead of just a general statement of purpose, the program asks for a prompt, it has a question about that's very specific, spend a lot of time answering each question and just write anything that comes to your mind, and then kind of from there create your answer. Research, know exactly what the program is that you're applying for. One good thing that some people could do is to look at the website of the program and kind of mirror some of the language that they use, but never repeating exactly word for word what a website says, just so you understand how it is that they talk about the program and kind of show that you understand. Don't be too lengthy, condense everything. You can always, if something is in your statement of purpose or your personal statement that doesn't add value to it, always cut it out. Everything that you say should have value. Use anecdotes when you can, but not more than a couple. And be real, be an authentic version of yourself. Don't try to exaggerate who you are, your accomplishments, because people, especially admissions officers and other PAs, they can see right through that. They'll know when you're exaggerating your accomplishments, and also they have your CV, so and your letters of recommendation as well, so they'll know exactly who you are through those documents at least. And then also the most important thing whenever you're getting started with writing and before you hand something in is to have someone else look over your work. So you never want to just submit something in a rush and be like, okay, I worked on it, it's great, whatever, and then send it in, or wait till the last minute to send in something, because it's always going to be a small typo or a small error. And those kind of things, well, they're not indicative of the kind of student you are. They can leave a bad impression on anyone who's looking over your document. So important tips for writing anything: use your voice, cast a hook, avoid cliches, and be authentic. What do these things mean? I can go into some of them. When you avoid cliches, so referring to everything as my passion, or being the best of the best, or something opening your eyes or broadening your horizons and showing you the world like you've never seen it before. Those are a pretty cliche way to open any kind of statement of purpose or personal statement. And starting with a famous quote or obscure pop culture reference isn't always the most effective way either. You want to start personal, definitely, but you don't want to kind of have the person who's reading whatever it is they're reading roll their eyes. Don't use a thesaurus to find new words. This goes back to being authentic. Like, speak how you would speak in a professional setting, in writing at least, and use words that you know. You don't need to beef up whatever it is that you're saying with fancy words. How are we on time? Okay, and then don't waste any opportunity to explain yourself. So as Melissa said, like, if you feel like your GPA wasn't as high as you would like it to have been, or you feel like it's not as high as it needs to be to get into the program you're applying to, use the space in your personal statement, in your statement of purpose, to explain why. Don't start off with like, I know my GPA sucks, but later on in the document, like, you want to go into what it was, what happened that made it that way, or like not focusing on the fact that your GPA is low, but like how you raised your GPA from a 2.3 to a 3.8 in one semester, like what it was that you did to make that happen and how you knew that you needed to change your outlook on your studies. Don't be too extra, and don't ever plagiarize. That's bad. I don't think I need to explain that more. And don't state the obvious. So here are a few examples of some openings to statements of purposes that people have submitted. I won't read all of this, but just some openings that are a little trite or overdone. So people might start with I'm applying to a Master's in Fine Arts program in creative writing at the University of blah, blah, blah, because I believe my writing will blossom at your program, since it's a place where I'll be challenged and I can hone my writing skills. First of all, saying I am applying for XYZ is the simplest way to start your essay, but also the most boring. And maybe having a fun intro isn't necessarily gonna get you into a school. It's also a wasted space to start that way. So always try to start in a way that's engaging or interesting. And if you can't, I guess it's okay to say that you're applying for the program that you're applying for, but again, you're wasting the space, so why do that? And then again, this person says that they're saying, I believe your program, I will blossom at your program, and I will be challenged and to be able to hone my writing skills. So this is immediately coming off with this is what your program is going to do for me. I'm not coming to this program with anything except for believing that my writing skills will be good at your program. And then in this next example, under the dotted line, this person starts their essay with, studying is my passion and I've always enjoyed it. While working a factory job, I realized I wanted to go back to school to better myself. Again, this person is saying that studying is their passion, not even the field that they're trying to study in, but studying is their passion. I've always enjoyed it. Enjoying something, again, is a phrase that you want to avoid, just because it doesn't say anything. It just says that you liked spending some time doing a thing that maybe you had to do. And whereas this person might have an interesting story, they were working a factory job, but then all of a sudden wanted to go back to school, let's hear more about that. And so as we kind of try to make that opening better, you'll see how they did that in these examples. I can send this document to y'all out. I don't want to read it all. I just don't want to read to you guys, sorry. So why doesn't this work? I'll give you an example of, this is from a, those sites where you can buy somebody's statement, somebody can write one for you, or you can hire someone to do it. And so this was an example that was given on one of those sites. And so it started with, I enjoy studying science because it's a subject that encompasses so much of my life's issues and practicalities, and a subject that can be applied and made useful to everyday life. Biological science is fascinating, but it is even more exciting when studying abnormal function in medical science, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason that this doesn't work as an opening is that it's generic. Anyone could have written this, and the use of I enjoy studying science. And also this, I do X because Y. I'm doing this thing because of this other thing that happened in my life. There are ways to jump into your writing immediately, instead of just introducing everything and then explaining the thing. It's also quite a vague introduction. again, anyone could have written it. It doesn't really say that much about what it is that they're interested in. You have to get to the end of the second sentence to really understand what it is that they enjoy about science. And so here's a list of words. This is from the University of Oklahoma Writing Center's page, which I think is also listed on the Kochi University's Writing Center page. There's a link to this. It's a great resource, and they kind of list out a lot of things to avoid when writing in general, but also when writing statements of purposes specifically, just to kind of hone your writing so that you're not using expressions that maybe are overly done. There's a whole list of words and phrases you can avoid, things like significant or gratifying or appealing to me. What it means is to not use these words to avoid using them without explanation means sometimes people will just say, like, I'm interested in this thing, and then they never explain how they have shown that they're interested in the thing. By saying that I'm interested in it, or that it's appealing to me, or it's valuable or meaningful, that doesn't show that that's actually true. It's just you saying it. So you want to show, I'm interested in studying this because, in the last 8 years, I spent 4.5 of that dedicating, 8 hours a week to this specific lab where I did all of these things, X, Y, and Z. And so that's showing interest. So you never just want to say, I'm interested in this thing, and then move on to another line. You always want to add an explanation as to why you're feeling a certain way about something, or why you have an opinion about anything. So questions you can ask yourself for your statement of purpose: why this school? What aspect of the research entices me? Here's why I didn't score well on that test and what it was I learned from that failure. What's special about me as an applicant that sets me apart from the rest? What are my career goals? So many questions, so many things to just get you started on what to say. And then next, you want to kind of know how to arrange all of the questions that you've now answered. So, you want to start. There are basically 4 general sections to a statement of purpose. You want each section to have about 1 to 2 paragraphs, not really more than that. And the first section can be your story, your interest in the subject. As long as you're not saying everything that's on your CV, this is a great way to show how you connected to this field. And then the next thing is to go into your skills and your relevant background, talk about professors that inspired you, classes that really, really meant something, and also specifically what in those classes, not just the class course, but what subject within those classes, specific books or research that have gotten you really interested in this field. And then also your research and work. Talk the talk, meaning don't use jargon, but talk in the way that shows that you understand the field, or you understand the research that you're doing, you understand the implications of the research that you're doing. So you know what you're talking about, and that you know what you're going to getting into when starting this program. And then again, why you and why this program. Keep that brief. This is you want time to mention your research, your projects, but also why the university can help you and why you can help it. It's a symbiotic relationship, remember that. And this last thing is, if you're applying to a lot of different schools and you don't want to keep rewriting a statement of purpose for every single one, and it's also good that you're not necessarily going to rewrite a statement of purpose for each one, because that shows that what you're interested in is your research and what you're studying, and not the school itself. So it's actually great that you can reuse it. It's just you should make sure that any kind of attention that you paid to that institution in your statement of purpose, that you tailor that to every school. So yeah, again, as I said, you should have a passionate introduction. A passionate hook is the intro, and then you move into your background, talk about your research and publications or professional accomplishments, and then any related activities outside of school or research that have to do with what you're applying for, and anything that you need to bring up that might be flagged by an admissions person, and then why you've chosen the school. And then this is the part where you can sub out the school's name or the program's name or the professor's names, but still they should be relevant. It shouldn't just feel like you did sub them out. And basic things that you should just keep in mind when writing is to use 12-point font or 10, but never less than 10 and never more than 12. Use simple fonts like Times New Roman or Arial, and keep your document single space unless they ask for double space, of course. And a statement of purpose and a cover letter should be about 1 page, but never more than 2 pages, unless I guess they're double space, then maybe 4. And there's a lot of different topics for personal statements, because again, personal statements are a little bit of a different format than statements of purposes, but and this is more really, the slide was for undergraduate applications, but you know, some people want to really bring in a personal story into their personal statement, but you know, there are some very common things that people want to talk about, like an important relationship, again, the grandma thing. People love talking about their grandma in their application essays, and I don't know why, but yeah. Everyone's grandma is inspiring, I guess. And service-based activities, so volunteering, people going abroad, and you know, having a life-changing experience over the course of 1 week that like set them on their school trajectory. And then, or like a sporting activity. This is really true for Americans as well, like how sports changed their life or taught them teamwork or taught them discipline. So you know, those are subjects you might want to avoid in your personal statement just because they've been done. And the final question you want to ask yourself when writing, and really anything, is could anyone else but me write this? You want yourself to come across in your writing, and you want the person who's reading whatever it is that you're writing to feel like they have a sense of who you are, they have a sense of the kind of work you've done, the kind of work you will do, and if they feel like they want to work with you. And that's all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Andrella. I had a problem with my computer. I'm sorry for the delay. Since we still have a few minutes, I would like to ask you some of the questions that our participants sent us. So you actually covered the first question, so I'm going to skip that one. So they asked, in an application essay, in which order should the essay, in which order should they write the essay, and in how much length they should give for each step?
In which order should they write the essay? Sorry, meaning, what was that?
Should write the essay. So what should be the flow in the essay? I guess they wanted to ask.
What should be the flow? Oh, okay. So I kind of went over like a brief flow in one of the slides, but you know, essentially your introduction should be about what got you interested in the field that you're applying for and that you're trying to do your studies in, and then you want to move into your specific areas of research, your actual backgrounds, not just your interests, but you know, the work that you've done, prove that you have that interest, you know, how you've been involved, what activities you've done, who you've worked under, what kind of labs you've done, what kind of research you've done. And then you can move into why that institution is the right place for your research to be at. And that's the basic flow that you want to go through. You know, start with yourself, but then very quickly move into your accomplishments and your background and your field of research.
Thank you so much. And I can ask a second question, again, frequently asked. They're asking if they should include their other scientific interests, or should they focus on only on the topic that they're applying for?
You know, this would be, I don't know if this is a question for me. I think this really depends on the program that you're applying for. As I said when we started, like, one of the important things is to make sure that you really understand the program, and having reached out to the people in that program and any PIs or any admissions officers who you can, and to understand what it is that they want to hear and what it is, you know, make sure that it's a match, not just that you're saying what they want to hear as well. And so, you know, if you have areas of interest outside of whatever it is that you're studying and that you're writing about in your personal statement, if that accentuates, you know, certain qualities of what kind of researcher you are, or what kind of student you are, then I think, of course, mention them. But if, you know, if it's a tangential thing, you know, if you're applying for a neuroscience program and you happen to, I don't know, work at an animal rights shelter, if you can find the connection, then use it. But otherwise, I don't know why it's relevant.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I want to ask another question from our participants. Do you think starting your cover and your essay with a bold or another italic sentence or interesting sentence is helpful? Or should we write all the essay in a regular type?
Oh, you mean like
Yeah,
actually bold?
Yeah,
yes, in a
starting
regular
sentence
format.
with a bold.
Oh, like a bold format.
Yeah,
No,
or emphasizing
I don't.
some phrases, some sentences maybe in
I
your
would
essay.
say don't do that. I have never come across an application essay in which that was done. I think it seems like trying too hard, personally. But it should be bold in the sense that, like, linguistically or narratively, it's bold, but not bold-faced type. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see that we're already at the end of our time slot. And thank you so much for your participation again. And again, I believe that it was a really helpful presentation with great detail. And I'm sure that it was really a great help to all the participants. Again, thank you so much for thank you for all the time that you gave for this event. And I hope to see you in our next event.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third part of our event. I would like to give a warm welcome to Ceyda Hanım and Melis Hanım. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We think that for those interested in applying to a neuroscience program, hearing your personal experiences and thoughts would be very beneficial for us. So in order to start, we thought that it would be best if we can begin by having you give a brief summary about your academic career, as well as your credentials, before moving on to the questions that our participants have asked. So without further ado, if we can begin with Melis Hanım, that would be amazing.
Hi, of course. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Melis. I'm a PhD student at the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics and the Donders Institute and Radboud University in Nijmegen, the Netherlands. I'm researching the neurocognitive mechanisms of language acquisition and communication. Before my PhD, I completed my master's at the University of Amsterdam in Brain and Cognitive Sciences. And before that, I was a bachelor's student at Koç University in psychology and philosophy. So yeah, as I said, my research is on language acquisition and communication in early language acquisition. So I work with infants using EEG and a couple of other behavioral methods. And I look at language processing in the infant brain.
Thank you so much, Melis Hanım. Ceyda Hanım, if you don't mind.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I hope I can help you with the questions you have. I did my BA in psychology and philosophy at Koç University. After that, I was a lab manager, again at Koç University, working with Fuat Balcı and İlke Öztekin. And then from there, I went to Brown University to do a psychology PhD, working with David Better, specialized in cognitive neuroscience at Brown University. From there, I went to Nijmegen, just like Melis, and I did my first postdoc with Roshan Kuls at the Donders University, and Donders Institute, Radboud University. And then from there, I found a nice opportunity at Johns Hopkins University, studying the effects of psychedelic drugs on brain function. And I was always interested in this, and this institute was recently opened, like 2 years ago. So I took the opportunity to do my second postdoc. So now I'm in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins University.
Thank you so much for your contributions. It's amazing to hear that Koç University graduates have come to such places. So for the first question that our participants have asked, and this was a very frequent one too. How much of an impact does the university we receive our bachelor's degree from have on the opportunities available for us in higher education?
I can start if you like. Yeah, so the name of the university, I guess the prestige factor, of course, matters, but what actually matters is who you know and how connected those people are to the rest of the researchers in the world. That's one factor. So network is, I think, the most important factor. You can also be at a less prestigious university, but your own PI, who you've been working with, who you're networked with, could be publishing in really good journals. That's also a recognition factor that will get you ahead. But I think the most important thing is your experience. What have you done other than just studying at your bachelor's? What internships? What opportunities did you take? Those are the questions that are more important than the name of the university, I think.
Yeah, I fully agree. So I think for a career in research, the most important thing is that you are well equipped and prepared for a career in research. And for this, you need to have some sort of research experience and like a solid background in terms of theory and experience. If the university that you're doing your bachelor's degree can provide you with these, great. If not, I would just look for opportunities outside of your university and just don't limit yourself to your university, but maybe look into other departments, look into other universities or institutions that you can do internships or research assistantship positions in. So yeah, in that sense, I think it's important.
Thank you. Thank you for both of your contributions. To move on to the second question, what motivated you to choose a career in neuroscience, and what aspects of it did you struggle with the most? So our participants were wondering the disadvantages that you faced with when you did go into your master's and doctorate degrees.
That's a really good question. So what motivated me personally, I was, just reading books really when I was really young. And I guess my father was a physician, so I was kind of inspired by him. My uncle was a philosopher, so I was, inspired by him. But overall, my motivation was just, personal. But beyond that, I think what was the disadvantage? I think that's a really good question. And I didn't know what my disadvantage was until I applied for the first time, which I should let you know, I was not accepted to any program the first time I applied for a PhD program. I was applying in the States. And I was told the first time, that was right after my bachelor's program, they asked me, so what about programming? And I'm like, I don't know programming. I study psychology. Then I figured out that in the States, psychology students who are getting ready for a neuroscience program definitely had experience in programming. Not only that, but they also had experience in EEG, fMRI, etc., which wasn't available to me at the time. So I tried to do lots of internships, but in Istanbul, it was really hard to find, an fMRI experience or even someone who would help me with programming. So that's why I did my internship. I was a lab manager to Fuat Balcı and İlke Öztekin for 2 years, where I learned MATLAB programming. I didn't have fMRI experience still, but that got me ahead. So that will be my first and foremost, I guess, advice is to learn programming and get some hands-on experience with some neuroscience tools if available, depending on which program you would like to apply. If you want to do behavioral, then go to a behavioral lab. If you want to do some neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, get some fMRI or EEG experience if available. If nothing is available, just learn programming. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much. Melis Hanım, is there any contributions that you would like to make?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Programming is really, really, really crucial. Getting hands-on experience is also crucial, but as Jada said, it's less available, I guess, in Turkey, or even maybe not at all. So if possible, get some research experience. It doesn't have to be neuroscience maybe, but just some research experience is important. Programming is definitely crucial. So in my experience, it's a challenging field because of the population I work with. So I work with infants, which is challenging, especially combined with EEG. It's even more challenging. So that was a struggle. But yeah, I think you need to you need to be prepared for the challenges that come with the technical. So you need to know lots of technical stuff. But yeah, that's part of the program that you're applying for, I think.
Thank you so much. Well, the third question kind of blends into our second one. What would you have done differently, and what would you have come to realize is important to research before applying to a specific program? Like, was there anything where you thought you knew what you were doing, but then you did get into the program and realized, oh, this is completely different. I wish I knew this. I wish I could research this before.
Yeah, I think I'm very happy with my choices so far. I don't think I would have changed much, but I have also had lots of people who suffered from certain decisions that I can give an example of. One of them is lack of funding. So they did not really contact the professors before they made the application. So the professor, picked them and decided to recruit them. However, they didn't have any more funding to actually support their full trajectory, which then put the students in disadvantage because they were trying to get funding and they couldn't get funding, and some of them had to drop out. So funding is the most important thing to kind of talk about before you even apply for a program. I think, yeah, that will be the only thing. And also, yeah, it's really important to just talk to the professor themselves. See if you're a good match. It's not always about them liking you. You have to like them too. You're talking about 4 years of real committed relationship. If you cannot sustain a good conversation with this person, you're going to have real big trouble graduating from that program. I also seen lots of people dropping out just because of personal problems with their PhD advisors.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I can only speak from my experience, which is a master's and a PhD in a European institute. So I think things would be different in US-based institutes, kind of. But I think you need to know what sort of training your program provides you with. So what sort of training your master's program provides you with, and what sort of training your PhD program provides you with. If you are, as we said, interested in neuroscience, you need to know lots of programming, for example. So does your institute provide you with such sort of training, for example? And yes, your choice of supervisor is really important. So I would really invest your time and effort into knowing who you are getting in a relationship with in that sense. So do your research about your supervisor, do your research about your institute, and then apply. Yeah.
Thank you. The fourth question is, what methods did you find most useful when choosing the institution to work with? How did you go about your research?
When you say methods, can you clarify what you mean by that?
I meant, did you guys, did you meet with other doctorate students in the program? Did you use YouTube videos? What kind of methods, like your own institutions at that time? How were some of the ways that we could gain information?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I directly contacted the supervisor that I wanted to work with, and then just asked for an interview, just a casual conversation. Most people don't respond, I have to let you know, so don't get disappointed. If you send an email to 20 people, maybe 4 people will really respond, because they don't know you. They don't know where you're coming from, and they keep receiving these emails. So it's nothing personal. What I did is I tried to find connections. I tried to introduce myself from that perspective. This is the person, I contacted. They advised that I contact you, or something like that. That was my method, because think about it like this, these PIs are receiving so many emails per day. They do kind of ignore unless you kind of say the right thing. So that right thing most of the time is who you know, or what research you have done, or check their profile and see what they are doing at the time, or look at the most recent funding grant that they got, and then pick that word, put it in the subject line, try to get their attention. They will not pay attention unless you put some keywords in there. That was my method.
Thank you, Ceyda Hanım. Melis Hanım.
Yeah, I also contacted my supervisors directly. So I asked for an interview, and before even applying to the PhD position, so this was like a structured PhD position that you had different stages of interviews of. So even before applying for the PhD position, I talked to my supervisors, and yeah, we just discussed if I would be a good fit for the program, basically. But it also depends on the institution, I think. So if you're applying to a US-based institute, again, some supervisors don't really want to be contacted before you apply, I know. But it depends on the person, and it depends on the university, probably. But I also talked to PhD students in my lab to see what kind of environment there is in the institute and in the lab. So I think it's really important that, if possible, you reach out to PhD students or research assistants and talk to them as well, because yeah, you want to know what kind of lab this is. Is this like a lab where people get together, or do people work mostly individually? So those kind of things that you might want to know as well.
Thank you so much. Along with this question, our participants also wanted to know if there was additional steps that needed to be met before the interview process took place with the supervisor. Was there anything, is there any advice that you could give us?
Before the interview process, yeah, I think this would be similar to my previous question. I took the step before the application and interview process. There's no other official step before then, but I really recommend you taking the step to make that possible, because that kind of FaceTime is going to get you ahead, especially if they don't know the institution, especially if you're not in their small network you're coming from, then you have to make that FaceTime. So yes, the first step for me to find the person, make sure that they have funding available, contact them, drop some name or some specialty or something that they are interested in, make sure I have FaceTime, then I apply. Because to be honest, I applied to multiple places. The only places that returned to me was the ones that I took these steps. All the others were basically just gone. So what does that mean? On my end, I spent lots of money applying to these schools that I didn't have FaceTime with. So they were like, I don't know this person. I'm not going to, spend time for them. So take those steps yourself before the application process.
Thank you. Melis Hanım, is there any contribution you would like to add?
Yeah, I think I only agree with Ceyda. I don't know of any official steps that you have to take before applying. So yeah, I would contact the people.
Thank you. The next question is, are there, or what is the significant differences between the education systems of the countries you have studied in and Turkey? Were there any?
For the US, I don't think there were significant differences. There was a lot of focus on stats and, again, programming-based courses. But other than that, for me, there was no significant differences, really. And I guess Koç University education is very American-like or based. So for me, nothing.
Yeah, in the Netherlands, and I think most of the European institutions or universities, your PhD is mostly focused on research. So you do get training, you do take courses, but that's extra. So you are, well, I have to say first that you are an official employee of the institution that you work at. So you're not considered a student, at least in the Netherlands. It might change from country to country. You are an employee, so you are treated as an employee. Your rights is the same as any other postdoc or professor, which means that you're no longer a student, which means that your job is to do research and write your dissertation and then graduate. You take courses, but that's extra. And in some universities, you're required to teach as well, but that is also dependent on the university, so that differs. So the most important difference is that it's mostly based on research and not really the courses that you take. Yeah, I think that was the main difference between the Turkish university system and the Netherlands.
Thank you so much.
I guess I should add that since Melis mentioned that, yes, so in US, I guess unlike in Europe, you both take courses and teach, and there is some differentiation between the school structures. Some of them consider you student throughout your PhD, although you also teach. And some of them actually do think that you're an employee. For example, at Brown, we were considered students until my 5th year, where we became employees because we unionized as the students or the student employees. So there are differences. If that matters to you, which might, you should definitely look into which schools consider you students and employees before you get there.
Thank you so much for your contributions. Similar to this question is, did you notice any distinguishing job opportunities of each country? Like, were some of the countries more advanced in terms of the opportunities that they lay out in front of you? Or do you think that Turkey might still be disadvantageous in this, as we see neuroscience becoming not like currently familiarized?
Yeah, I would say yes. I don't know of many people who do neuroscience in Turkey, and that's mainly because of lack of funding, I would say. The Netherlands, especially where both Jada and I worked, is a very famous neuroscience institute, I think. So yeah, there is lots of funding available, so it's very easy to do research. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Melis. Also, my experience with the Netherlands wasn't as, I guess, positive in terms of funding. I experienced that funding was lacking in Netherlands, actually. One of the reasons why I chose not to stay there. And for example, I'm also a mentor still to master's and PhD students at Donders. One of our, for example, really bright master's students cannot get a PhD funding right now. So I think there is some reduction in funding opportunities lately in the Netherlands. So if you want to like have a full-on career, given my experience in both countries, I actually recommend US if it boils down to it, because there's much more opportunity for private funding if the government funding fails. And I had the opposite experience in the Netherlands. I felt like it was kind of lacking. I couldn't secure anything. There were 2 opportunities for me only, and I couldn't get them.
Thank you for your contributions again. So our next question from our participants were, do you have any advice on how we can better build our CVs? Also, how important are extracurricular activities when applying to a neuroscience program during the undergraduate years?
When building CV, yeah, again, the most important thing, I would say, the most would be publications. But not everybody will have many publications, and not everyone will have good publications in good journals. So that should not be a factor that brings you down. So how to compensate for that is the most important thing. And I think that is really experience. If you want to go to a cognitive neuroscience lab, make sure you're part of some experimentation process that is on humans. If you want to go to an animal lab, have some experience in an animal lab. Those are the distinguishing factors, and really who you worked with.
Thank you so much, Jada.
Yes, I agree. What you put on your CV, I think, depends on the requirements of the program that you're applying for. So some programs only ask for a one-page CV, and then you can't really put much on it. But if you have the space, I would just detail what you have done in each lab. So if you have research experience, I would just really say what you have done in that lab, just rather than just saying I was a member of this lab. So do you have experience collecting data? Do you have experience with data analysis? Do you have experience running a lab? For example, I would just detail what you have done in the lab. And I think there was another question about the extracurricular activities, right? I think they are important as long as there is like a tangible outcome of these extracurricular activities that you have done. So for example, if you organize a conference, that is something that I would definitely put on there because it shows that you have organizational skills. I don't know, you are able to work in a team, etc. So I would definitely put it on there. But for things like hobbies and stuff, I'm not really sure. Maybe people have different opinions. I don't really put hobbies on my CV, but yeah, that could be personal choice.
Thank you so much. So our next question is, sometimes looking and researching scholarships can be very confusing and very time consuming. So how did you find these scholarships to apply for?
I honestly, when you say scholarship, you mean funding, I suppose, like grants. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so they are really hard to find. When I was applying, which by the way, I could not manage to get one, to be honest. It's really competitive, super hard, and sometimes it also boils down to luck. So I try not to take it personal. And what I guess you can do, the first pass would be to actually contact the person that you want to work with and ask them, are there any grant opportunities that you think would be relevant for our specific field to apply together? Depending on the country, you can look at the governmental grants. They are going to be the most promising ones. And then depending on the field, you can go for private funding, specifically if you're in the United States.
Thank you so much, Ceyda. Is there any contributions you would like to make, Melisa?
Yeah, I did my master's with a scholarship at the University of Amsterdam. So it was called Amsterdam Excellence Scholarship. So most universities would have some sort of scholarship available for international students or for like students from Europe as well. The conditions would differ and the requirements for applying for a scholarship would also differ. But you can just look at the programs and the university's websites to see if there are any scholarship opportunities. And for PhDs, you are paid your salary. So if you get your PhD, you would get funding as well.
Thank you so much. So our last question that our participants wanted to ask was a little bit more personal. And it was, do you ever wish that you pursued a career that is more application rather than research-based?
Yes, I wanted to do that. That's why I actually am doing my second postdoc. So here for my second postdoc, I'm trying to understand how psychedelic substance use or administration affects brain function and also symptoms of depression, anxiety, etc. So although I'm doing the theoretical work, now I feel more satisfied because I feel like what I do can be applied to actual therapy. So yes, I did really feel like that. And that's why I decided to take a kind of elongate my trajectory, I guess. And it feels much better. I like this more. I want to work with patients. I want to see some outcome, but it doesn't have to be the same for everyone. I realized a little bit later, I guess, but I'm definitely not regretting it.
Thank you. Melisa?
Personally, no, or not yet. Maybe it will change in the future. So I always wanted to do basic research. But by doing a PhD, you should get lots of transferable skills and knowledge that prepare you for a career outside of academia. So what Ceyda described is still within academia, I think still within research. But your PhD should be able to provide you with the skills that you can also transfer to other fields outside of academia, like, I don't know, data science, organizational or managemental skills. So if you ever wanted to change tracks, that should also be an option for you after your PhD or during your PhD even.
Thank you so much. This wraps up the questions that our participants asked, but if you thought of something during this session and you want to bring it up, that now would be the perfect time.
I guess my biggest advice is try to connect with people. Make sure you reach out to PIs, professors, or even PhD students, postdocs. Just try to increase your visibility and never feel disappointed, or never take it personal if someone doesn't respond to you. Don't get disappointed. Keep trying, and don't settle down for less than what you think you should get.
Thank you, Ceyda Hanım. Melis Hanım, would there be anything else, any advice that you would like to give?
Yeah, I fully agree with Ceyda. Don't be disheartened by the lack of opportunities that you currently have, probably. So if you want to do neuroscience and you feel like, oh, there is no neuroscience opportunities in my university, don't be disheartened. It's the same for most people. Just look for opportunities outside of your immediate circle, I think, and do your research really, really. I can't stress this enough. Do your research about your supervisor and your institute. Pick your supervisor wisely if possible. Talk to people, try to expand your network, and try to make the best decision that you can do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for spending time out of your day to join us. We thought that it was very beneficial for our participants and ourselves. So once again, thank you, and we wish you a great night. Right now. And now I would like to introduce to you the co-president of Kusayn, Berk. He will move along with the mock application process. So.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Didar. Thank you for the great moderation for the alumni part. And for this mock application part, actually, let me start with an introduction of myself. I am Berk, and I am a senior student at Electrical and Electronics Engineering with a double major in physics at Koç University. And we wanted to share with you, like, as a co-president of Kusayn, we wanted to share with you the student's perspective, lastly, because I believe that, like, the perspective of the alumni, the perspective of the admissions committee are really, really important. But really, what do we need? Like, what happens in the application process? And I will share with you my experiences for the last year. So let me share my screen. So here. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So mock application part. So what the hell is a mock application? As I told you before, like, we wanted questions from you at the forum, and we understood that you were confused a bit about the mock application. And to clarify this, it is just an application from students' view. Like, I will do a basic presentation from the students' view, then we will together do a mock application to one of the university's neuroscience program. So the outline will be like, I will give you before application tips, then documents needed and important points, and we'll do a mock application.
Berk, can you stop sharing screen and perhaps share it again, because it doesn't look quite clear right now, like your screen.
Okay, maybe I can, I should change my internet connection. Just a moment, please. So thank you. Sorry for the delay, guys. So let's try again. Is it better?
Not really.
Really?
Yeah, it's same. Maybe you can send the email to me and I can
Okay.
share.
That's perfect. I can share directly from chat.
Okay.
So I think maybe I can start with the tips, then I can share the slides, not to wait everybody. So the first tip and the most important thing is, I think, be careful about the small things, because small things take time. Like before applying, I thought that I had plenty of time to see, to talk with people, to write my SOPs and everything. But as you get involved with the process, you figure out that like the smallest things, the smallest details are really, really important, especially if you're trying to apply to the top places. And they really take time. Like as one of like Melissa Balanche showed us. Okay. Thank
Is
you.
it clear?
Yeah, you can pass this one.
Okay.
You can also pass this one. Okay, perfect. So, as I told you, like, be careful about the small things. So start with my presentation. So know what you want, because it's really, really important again. Since, for example, especially for neurosciences, since it's an interdisciplinary program, we tend to, like, there are many different types of applicants. Like there is the medical background applicants and there are like psychological background applicants, and everybody likes neuroscience at some points. But especially what kind of neuroscience changes. Like you may love how the brain works and it may fascinate you, but you should be careful about the subtopics. And like, do you want to work with animals, or do you want to do computational neuroscience, etc.? And it should fit with your background. So, and then searching part, like you should search for the areas more than you think you will need, because like reading or skimming through pages may take longer than you think. Preparing documents takes the longest time, I think. And like other parts, they mentioned how like each document needs individual care and individual preparation. And like, for example, you should spend like hours to prepare and work on your SOP, and as well as your CV. And you should be organized, because like, for example, to use similar SOPs, but not to get confused with like which deadline was for which university and which documents were needed for which universities, it may get really confusing. So we can pass this one again. So the documents needed, they also mentioned this, but updated CV, updated transcript, letter of motivation. I came up with like passport, which is interesting. And sometimes they want a photo and they all want language scores. Okay, no, we can pass this one also. Yes, you can pass, go on. So yes, small things take time. Then deadlines. You should also be careful about the deadlines, and don't obey the Parkinson's law. I don't know if you know it, but there is a thing called Parkinson's law, and we tend to postpone everything till the deadline. Don't do this, because as I told you before, like small things take time, and you will need more time as a deadline comes. And don't be shy, just go reach for the people, and don't be shy from asking, like do not hesitate to ask for help. There are many sources that you can use of our university, of other universities, or you can just directly reach to the people. Just be careful with your language and be nice, and don't hesitate to ask. Okay. And be aware of the opportunities you have. Yes, I have mentioned this. Yes, contact beforehand. Like you can use LinkedIn, you can put someone in between, like I think Melis mentioned it. Like she contacted and she mentioned the importance of networking. And I felt that because like many of the schools have really, really low quota. And even like everything can get you one step further compared to other ones. So if they know you, like if they know you even a bit, or if they know your name, they will be more secure choosing you. And don't despair, don't panic. Please don't do this, because like I felt this despair and panic a lot this year, because like there are times that you think that you are the perfect candidate and you'll go right into the best schools. And sometimes you feel like everybody, like a 5-year-old Chinese is better than you, which is usually true. But do not despair, because you are also special. And by like following the true path, you can also be there. But it takes more time than we usually think it is. Also, especially for US, they may want up to 3 references. And for references, you should be careful. Like, I don't know if you have any participants from lower, like first years. And I wish I knew this before, because in order to get a reference from a like professor, you need to work with them. Because if their reference just includes like, oh, he is a nice guy and he likes doing sports and he got an A, it doesn't make much sense. But if they can write like, yes, we have worked on like 3 different projects and for 3 months, and he just successfully managed to lead this group, and he really knows great anatomy and stuff, that would be really, really beneficial. Yes, we can. And it is expensive. I don't think the other parts, they mentioned this a lot, but I felt this a lot, especially with the current crisis. So usually the programs cost between like $75 and $120. And you should be like looking forward to applying to like 10 to 20 schools maybe. So you should know beforehand that you should have some money apart. So I was planning to do the application with you, but since I cannot share the screen, maybe I can. I also found a video. Maybe I can share this and we can just skim over the video. It also shows the parts of the application. And Orhan, could you?
Yeah, I'm opening that.
And before that, actually, could you also share this one?
Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
So just before that, could you open this Excel file?
Okay, just a second. Do you want me to share that?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm clicking from YouTube.
So, like under the organized parts, I would recommend you to just like have an Excel file or a sheet, which includes the details that are important for you about the programs. So, for example, here you can see this is one of our friends. She applied to Netherlands, Germany, and UK, and there are different points that are important for her. This is really, really beneficial because, as I told you before, like you are applying to 10, maybe like 20 places, and sometimes you like get lost along with them. So I really recommend having an Excel file or sheets like this. Also, it is really, really beneficial if you have a place in your computer, folder. I have mine as like grad applications, and I have different applications. Like I have different folders, subfolders for each schools. And since each school need different stuff, you can just put them there, and at the time of application, you can just take them from there. It really gives you like time. So we can share the YouTube link. Thank you, Orhan. By
you are welcome. You can see, right?
Yes. So I was planning to apply to TUM Online, which is a really popular technical university of Munich. So we can pass a little bit. So before everything, you just write, like, for example, you are planning to apply to TUM because you know somebody from there, or you just want to apply there. You just go to Google and write like Neurosciences program TUM, and you just directly go to their site, and you read about the important points. It's really important. Then you get a screen like this. You can just pass a little bit. You just log in. So many of the application process starts like this. You need to sign up to their online application portal. Sometimes, like for example, for Netherlands, they have a common one. For TUM, they have their individual. So you, after creating an account, you log in. We can again pass. So we can pass this part also.
Okay.
They're looking at the process. Yes, so you usually see a screen like this, or it may depend, and you start your application. You should know that you have everything required before your application. So you start your application, and part by part, you just fill the parts and like address and stuff. And then you give like the passport and the motivation letter, etc. Again, like the thing I was surprised with was like you use your address and your references, contacts and references, names a lot. So I suggest you to take those all at a part, like at the sheets also. For example, maybe your honors, maybe your like references, contact numbers, etc. Yes, we can pass fast. For example, they're applying for informatics. It's just you can go really, really fast. So yes, these are like the personal things.
I'm passing. Yeah, just told me to stop there.
Yes, it's just to give them an insight of this. So I found it really hard to apply for TUM actually, because like you need to give specific data of your like high school and lots of like details. But for example, for US, it's not that like that hard, I think. Yes, I think they got the point. So we can just go to the question and answer session. If you guys have any questions to me, I'll be more than happy to answer. Sorry again for the technical problems. And we will be sharing you the slides to all applicants. So if no questions, thank you all for coming. It was really nice to see you here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
It's a little bit personal question, but what was your success rate you applied to the programs? I mean, you are very successful student, and I'm wondering, as a successful student's rate of acceptance in programs?
Yes, it was actually really, really low. I thought of myself as a successful student before I was applying, but actually, like after talking with many other students that I think are successful, especially for the US, for example, for like the alumni we've had here, they also didn't have the chance to get accepted from a university at their first year. And for example, I talked with someone that is currently at Stanford, and he was like a 4.0 GPA student with a double major and with articles at undergrad degree. And even he didn't receive an acceptance at his first year. So especially for the PhD, I think it's really, really hard if you have no network or contact, because you're like we are all on the same boat with all the world now, and like everybody studies really hard. And coming back to my acceptance rate, I just got accepted from 2 out of all. But unfortunately, like one was for a master's degree in Boston, and but I couldn't find scholarship, so I had to turn it down. And the other one was from Radboud University, and unfortunately I couldn't find scholarship for that too. So I'm waiting for the other applications, and maybe I will apply for the next semester too. So yeah, that was it.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, we are going to close this meeting, but thank you all for joining us today. And we will share all the Gmail addresses and the links and the presentations if you have registered to our event. So don't worry about it. And thank you so much for